Perfect. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Anisa Hajimomen, Assistant Commissioner for Immigrant and Refugee Affairs with the Department of Employment and Economic Development. Um, Today's discussion is around engaging with PIPAC, including immigrant and refugee job seekers, what barriers community members who are also job seekers face, and what can community leaders do to help employers connect and identify job seekers in their communities. We have my colleague who is also a deed will be speaking of ways to kind of close the gap and bring employers and job seekers together. And then at the end, we will have community updates. The Department of Agriculture will have some team members and directors that will be joining us to share some information with us. And with that, I'd like to acknowledge that May is a Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. Pang Shang, who is a first generation American and community leader, is co-designing with the Minnesota Humanities Center. And this project is really important. It's part of the Asian Pacific American Heritage. And they will be holding or hosting an event on educational forum to broaden people's awareness on Minnesota Hmong American community. I'm sure there are other activities will be going on, and definitely if you have information on that, please feel free to share in the comment or chat box. And as a reminder, please note all audience members will be muted during discussion. And if you have a question, please feel free to put it in the comments section. And after the forum, we will post a blog about the discussion and updates and any other resources that we have shared today here at the forum. And it will be posted on either Thursday or next week, Monday. That's what we usually do. The forum is held every Tuesday or the first Tuesday of the month, 3 to 4:30. If I have left somebody out that you feel should be part of the forum, please feel free to reach out to me, or you could always feel free to, share the invitation. And with that, we will start our discussion today. I'm really excited and I look forward to hearing from our guest speakers. First one is Yusra Mohamud. Yusra is a senior business specialist at Wells Fargo. She's also one of the new board members at Lake Street Council. Congratulations, Yusra. She's also a financial literacy trainer to community members accessing business resources at Wells Fargo. Like many others in Minnesota, Yusra is a first generation born in Canada, raised in Minnesota. And we often talk about the barriers immigrants and educated folks abroad face, but we also see similar barriers, immigrants and children born and raised here are facing, generations that do not have language, education, or skill problems, but yet they run into the same issues. And this is why Yusra is with us today, and she'll be talking about these issues and what support the public and private sector can help curb that issue and support job seekers like herself, although she has a job, but people like her that do not have jobs and are educated locally can be able to be utilizing the resources and support systems available to them. Thank you. Yusra, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited about this today. And I think this subject is very important. This is something that has come about through, I'm kind of young, but it's something that I've been hearing since I've graduated, and I didn't get a job right after high school or college. It took me some time with all the skills and the knowledge that I've been working since I was 15 in retail. So I was like, okay, I feel like I built enough experience. So by the time I'm in my 20s, I should be having all that, great experience, and there's nothing that they can say, but it wasn't the case. And so my dad, the first thing that he told me was the supermodel, Iman. She said the first time she came to America, the only biggest struggle she had was finding a job. And, that's something that sat with me as educated as she was, speaking English very fluently. It's something that it's a hurdle that we're always running into. So as Anissa mentioned, I work a lot with small businesses in the community. And when I speak with these small business owners, a lot of them are in the are minorities. And the reason they said that they have opened their own business is because they said, I have a degree, I have two, I have masters, I have a PhD. I couldn't get a job. So that degree almost went to waste for them, but they went and took that degree and they said, I'm going to open my own establishment. I'll open my own clinic since I can't get hired at the hospital. I'll open institution, whatever it is. So it's very important. There's a lack of when it comes to this. Sorry, I think I cut off. There was a call. There's a lack of engagement when it comes to these things. And in the corporation I work for, I know that we're always seeking for diversity. We are always looking to hire a more diverse staff. And it's something that a lot of larger, I can only speak for financial institutions, but I know even with United Health Group or Optum and a lot of these larger organizations, they are looking to diversify their staff. But then there's a gap when they get these job applications. I don't know if it's the resume, or I don't know if it's once they get into the interview, the lack of maybe the accents or something that's stopping these larger organizations from hiring these immigrants. And sometimes there's also a reason that immigrants are not applying more for these larger institutions that they know that they deserve, that they can be, that they can work for. So,
Yusra, sorry to cut you off, but Emma just reminded us if you could adjust your camera so we can see you.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
I don't know if that's better. My laptop didn't charge enough on time, so I'm using my phone. So I apologize.
Okay. Is
it still?
I know it's like a horizontal, but it's Yep, there it is. Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry about that. Are you guys able to hear me well though?
Yes, and we can see you now. Thank you so much.
Sorry, I didn't realize that. Okay, I just put my phone against the wall, but I thought you guys could see me for some reason. I can't see myself. But yeah, so that's honestly some of the larger problems that I see that we've been facing. So what I've been doing is I've been working with students that are in college right now and helping them either with their resumes, some job building resources and careers. And I learned that something that does help is informational shadows and also job shadowing these jobs before they actually go ahead and apply, because that way these employers can see the person, can see the skill up front. But it's not something that everyone knows how to utilize. When you're applying for a job, you're not thinking, okay, I'm going to go job shadow right away before I apply. That's not something that comes to mind. Or I'm the one that's going to be asking the questions for informational, because it's very intimidating, especially when you don't know English. It's very intimidating to go and present yourself in front of these people. So, it's, I guess as a community, one of the things that we can collaborate on is making sure that these resources are available for immigrants. When it comes to the younger generation or even older, it's not like they have parents that can guide them because they lack those sourceful information. So it's every man for themselves really, is to find out what you can do for yourself. And we really need to focus on ways where we can provide these resources out into the community, because it's very important. It's very sad. It's a lack of engagement. I know some people who have kids who ended up, graduating with a 4-year degree, but their children ended up taking a different route in life, a harder route in life, because it was very hard for them to find a job. Maybe they got married right away, but they weren't financially stable. They had kids and those marriages failed because they weren't able to provide for their families due to them having a lack of jobs. So it's just something that we really need to focus on and be more proactive with, and find out solutions that we can provide to the community more often. if you want to add anything.
Thank you so much, Yusra. I really appreciate that for summing that up. I know that a lot of people say that, with the workforce strategies, like what can we do to, help people who have been, gotten their degrees abroad, but then when they come here, they take jobs that are not within the qualifications, and therefore, many employers are reluctant to hiring these people because the problem is that once they are hired, they may not stay with the employer. And with that, we often say, oh, well, why don't we have them think about, aligning, their qualifications with the career that they're applying into. But the thing is that with the immigrants' perspective is that they're not thinking about, okay, I have a PhD, therefore I'm going to apply for a job, without understanding the language and or necessarily the customs or traditions. So therefore they are thinking about making ends meet. And with that, even and of course, as somebody who was born and raised here and faced similar challenge, but what can you say, like, and if others have questions, definitely please post on here too. How can we help immigrants facing such challenges like that as well?
Yeah, so one thing, for example, the Association for Lindale Neighborhood, before Nicollet Lake Wells Fargo was burned down, we were able to provide them a free space at the lower level of the building where we taught English for free. And so I remember when these classes first started, there was about 5 to 10 community members that came to take a part of these classes, and it grew tremendously, and it helped so much. It helped with pronunciations, certain vocabularies. Like it was a resource that was given to them, and that way they were more confident in their interviews moving forward. Another thing that like my organization does is, as employees, after you're hired, we actually provide certain what we call like development classes, where it's the same thing, whether it's helping with public speaking or speech or writing. Some of us struggle with writing emails. Grammar is not our easiest thing. Even me, born and raised here, grammar has not always been my easiest thing. So, and it's something that can easily be done. It doesn't take 100 corporations to make this happen. It takes 1 to 5 people to set up something small in a room and take an hour of their day and have these young smart individual or old, whatever it is, but these immigrants come and teach them a little bit about grammar and vocabulary and comprehension and so forth. So I think that's something that I have seen that have worked. But if it can expand and become broader, it's going to make more of a positive effect throughout the immigrant community.
Great, thank you so much. Anyone has question for Yusra? Michelle Rivero has her hands up. Go ahead, Michelle.
Hi, thank you so much, Anissa, and thank you so much, Yusra, for this presentation. Very useful information. I wanted to ask you again, the organization that you were talking about with the English language classes, was that, you said it was Lindale Lake Neighborhood Association? Do you mind just confirming that again, what the name of the organization was?
Yes, it was Lindale. Yeah, I believe it was Lindale Lake Neighborhood Association.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Thank you. All right. Looks like we don't have any questions for Yusra, but thank you so much, Yusra, for present that. It's really important to that know about from different perspectives our immigrant and refugee communities are facing, but also generally the PIPOC communities and what we can do both on community and state level to be aware of what challenges they're facing, but also what solutions that we can work on through unifying our efforts. Thank you. Stay on. So we'll move on now to our next guest speaker. And let's see. So I have my colleague here, Adid Adeshewa Adesechi. She is a workforce strategy consultant for employers. She is engaged with, you know, advocating for PIPA communities and working on different initiatives that will definitely benefit the PIPA communities and job seekers, and especially in the manufacturing field and also the tech field. And she was one of the people that were leading on the topics of tech jobs for April last month, which we focused on our forum here. Today, she will discuss the challenges on employment and what Deed's workforce consultants for employers are doing to help connect employers and job seekers, challenge her team faces, and or support from PIPA communities that will be needed in order to be connected to the employers, including immigrant and refugees. Adeshewa, welcome.
Thank you, Anissa. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Before we start, I do have to apologize for not sharing my camera or having it on. And then also, if you give me a quick second, I'd like to share. I put together a really quick PowerPoint to talk from during this. So if you give me a quick second, I can pull it up. It's thinking. Okay, does everyone see this? Can everyone see it?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So once again, thank you, Anissa. Thank you for giving me time to speak. As she mentioned, my name is Adeshewa Adeseji. I am a workforce strategy consultant here at Deed. I cover the 7-county metro area. And so one of the things, or what I'm going to talk about today, is just an overall summary of what we do as workforce strategy consultants, and then how we engage with employers. So once again, our mission as workforce strategy consultants is to develop innovative workforce solutions by aligning resources, facilitating collaborations, and leveraging expertise in targeted industry sectors to drive economic equity and growth. So some of those things include designing tools and resources to support businesses. We also provide business consultation reports summarizing our conversation with employers and providing recommendations to grow and retain their talent, connecting businesses to regional stakeholders and resources in their areas, really build and help put together business-led partnerships, development of statewide initiatives aimed at growing industry talent, and trying to become, subject matter experts or becoming as knowledgeable as we can about different subjects when it comes to workforce development and in the ecosystem. So what we focus on is what we call in-demand industries. So below are a few of the in-demand industries that we focus on throughout Minnesota. So that includes healthcare, manufacturing, IT, construction, agriculture, education, transportation, finance, and professional services and government. The reason why we look at these as in-demand industries because they have shown to have a high growth and a high need for qualified talent for those industries. Now, we do work with employers from all industries across Minnesota. No employer is more important than another employer. We just want to mention that these are identified as some of the in-demand industries. So those are the ones that we do focus on. So overall, our message to our employers when we want to talk to employers, we're trying to have them change their mindset when it comes to recruiting and retaining. New mindsets equals new results. So that's our goal, is to how can we work with these employers and get them to think outside the box when it comes to recruiting and retaining talent, and not doing recruiting that you would have done in 2008, 2009 when the market was much different. So how do we work with employers to change their mindsets? So what we like to tell employers is there are two different markets that the pendulum swings back and forth between. You either have an employer-driven market or a candidate-driven market. So an employer-driven market, in a nutshell, is a market where basically the employer has the upper hand. There's more talent than actual job openings. So employers in this market is able to be more selective. You have someone that has a graduate degree applying for an entry-level jobs. Once again, because there are more job seekers and more talent than there is actual openings. Now, on the other hand, we have a candidate-driven market when it's the opposite. That's when the job candidate or the job seeker has the upper hand, which meaning that for every one job seeker, you might have 3 to 4 companies that are willing to hire them. So now it's the job seeker who can be more selective and could negotiate their wages and be able to start a job on Monday. And then if they get offered a better job on Wednesday, to be able to move into that new company and that new job. So in case you guys are not aware or are wondering what type of market we're currently in a candidate-driven market. Hence the reason why we like to tell employers you need to think outside the box when it comes to recruiting and retaining your talent. So what does a candidate-driven market mean for employers? Once again, changing the way how they look for talent, increase outreach to BIPOC talent, which I'll get into in a little bit, increased use of technology in everyday businesses, your business practices, globalization of the workforce, especially with remote and teleworking being a conversation that many employers are having. Your staff might not be located up the street. You might have staff that's located close to your business, but you might have staff that's located in a total different country with a total different time zone. So globalization of the workforce, changing the company culture. I know that we are focusing on diversity a lot, but we also as consultants tell employers that it's not only diversity that you need to work on, but also being inclusive, how to be welcoming. How we like to look at it is diversity is getting people from different backgrounds into the boardroom. Inclusiveness is allowing them to have a seat at the table and make decisions when it comes to policies and practices that's going to affect people like them in your workplace. So definitely be changing the company culture and becoming more inclusive. Invest in upskilling and reskilling of employees. Not only is recruitment important, but also retention. Once you get the employee, how do you keep them? You need to make sure that there's practices and policies in place to make sure that you keep those employees. Remember, this is a candidate-driven market. At any time, there could be another company coming that offers better benefits, better, higher wages, more training opportunities. So how do you put practices in place to keep your staff? And then support career development through career opportunities. That's another part of retention. Everyone that starts in an entry level does not want to spend their entire work life cycle in that same position. If that person that starts off in the entry level sees themselves eventually in a leadership role or in the C-suite role, how do you as the employer have an internal career pathway to get that person from entry level to a CEO, CIO, whatever level that they want to be? That's another way of longevity, retaining that employee, and developing a loyalty of that employee to your company. So just a couple of information or data that I like to present to employers. So this is regarding race and ethnicity projections in Minnesota. So as you see, or as you know, Minnesota right now is primarily white. Most of the residents in Minnesota are white. If you look at the 2018 to 2038 population projections, the total population in Minnesota is going to increase by 11.3%, or estimate to increase by that. As you can see, white non-Hispanic is the only population that's expected to decrease. Even if it's a small amount, it's still expected to decrease. If you look at the other groups, such as Black or African American, 74.5%. American Indian or Alaskan Native non-Hispanic, 13.3%. Asian or other Pacific Islander non-Hispanic, 69.3%. 2 or more races, non-Hispanic, 58.5%, and then Hispanic of any race, 48.8%. Now, the majority of Minnesota by 2038 will still be primarily white. However, there are going to be a large increase of residents from the BIPOC communities, and not only in the metro area, but also in outside the metro area, where it is you have a population of Somalis in St. Cloud, you have a Latino population in Mankato area, you have indigenous in the Bemidji and Northwest region. So it's very important, and we like to stress to employers, it's important to recognize that the face of Minnesota is going to change between 2018 and 2038. If you look at Minnesota age projections, you can see that at the bottom, 75 years of age and older by 2038, 87.1%. Minnesota is getting older, and those individuals are going to most likely not be in the workforce. If you look at the ages of 15 to 54 years, you have 7.8%, 6.3%, 13.5%, and 11.5%. These are the individuals that will be in the workforce. Now remember, the face of Minnesota is going to be changing. These individuals will not just be single, these will be individuals with families. Most likely, the individuals going into the workforce are going to be from these families. So I tell employers, or us as workforce strategy consultants tell employers, most likely in 5, 10, 15 years, when you have a job opening, it's not going to be all white males. It's not going to be all white. It's not going to be all women. You're going to have a diverse candidate pool, a diverse applicant pool. And it's important that you consider all applicants for employment. You reach out, you develop relationships with the BIPOC communities, because these are untapped talent pools. So, recruiting and retaining challenges for employers. These are some of the things that we identified. First one, employer-driven recruiting in a candidate-driven market. Once again, we have employers that still think all I need to do is post a job and the job seekers will come. And we're telling employers that's not the case. You have to think outside your box. You have to make the initiative. You have to develop relationships with your resources in your area, in the BIPOC communities in your area, especially for industries that are considered low wage, low skilled, which are not, for example, manufacturing. There is a huge opportunities to develop and have a successful long career earning, wages that can support yourself or your family in manufacturing. It's changing the narrative of the job seekers you're targeting about your industry or about your company. Also not open to remote work. So the big conversations, or one of the big conversations, is telecommuting and working from home. A lot of people have been exposed to that, and now they prefer that. So as an employer, how are you going to adapt to that? Are there positions or jobs that you have that could be done at home? And do they need to go into work? If you're not able or not willing to be flexible with that, there's a possibility that you're going to be losing candidates. You're going to be losing some of your staff over this. Lack of flexibility. Once again, that goes to not only remote work, but for people that have young children, being able to start an hour early or an hour late, not being stuck to a certain shift. Just being flexible and understanding that life happens outside of work. And are you willing to be flexible with that employee, that good employee who maybe for 6 months needs to start an hour later because of childcare issues? Building partnerships with K through 12 education system in your region. This is the workforce of tomorrow. It's about career exploration. It's about representing your company and getting into these schools, and these students becoming familiar and aware that you as an employer exist. Increasing recruiting efforts for BIPOC communities. This is so important. Once again, the face of Minnesota is going to be changing. You're going to have more individuals from diverse backgrounds applying and entering the job market. That is untapped talent. As the employer, are you ready? Are you prepared? Do you have a diversity and inclusive plan that includes not only recruiting, but also retraining those workers? Building internal career pathways to retain workers. Once again, looking at not only getting someone in an entry-level job and keeping them there, but how can you build them and start from an entry level to a C-suite level job? What are those internal resources that you set up as the employer to make sure that happens? So then that employee would want to stay with your company and they feel a sense of loyalty to that company for the opportunities that you've given them. And then also competition from within and outside the industry. You know, manufacturer employers are competing for the same talent. Hospital competing for the same talent. If you are a company, a long-term care facility, and you're offering $15, which is a good livable wage for your jobs, well, so does a lot of the fast food also. So that's an example of an external competitor. Realizing that, but not making any efforts to figure out how you can stand out of the crowd. How can you become that employer champion where all the potential candidates and job seekers look to you as the company that they want to work for? So how are we as workforce strategy consultants engaging in this work? So we help employers with developing reports, including, recommending action steps, recommendations, based on our conversations, based on what we know that is going on, based on the resources, based on previous initiatives that have happened has been successful. This is what we recommend. We usually like to do short, mid, and long-term goals for them. So short-term could be kind of that low-hanging fruit. How aware are the communities around you of your existence as an employer? How engaged are you with the resources and the communities in your area? We assist with building strategies, once again, for short and long-term talent growth. We serve as a connector between employers and the workforce development ecosystem. So that includes schools, that includes workforce development boards, that includes other workforce development organizations and associations on a city, county, or even another state department level. Really serving as a connector and making sure that the employers have access to as many resources as they can to help them with growing their talent. Relationship building, work with employers to establish long-term partnerships. We're not a one and done type of group. We believe in working with the employer if it takes 6 months, if it takes 6 years, if it takes 10 years to help that employer achieve their goal. That is what we'll do. Assist in the update of regional plans. Each region has a plan which identifies, once again, in-demand industries and strategies for increasing and developing talent in those regions. So some of us as workforce strategy consultants participate in the development of those plans. Coordinate industry-specific initiatives. As Anissa mentioned, I was one of the coordinators for the Tech Workforce Month, which happened last year. We participate or we help in other industry months, such as Healthcare Month in January, Manufacturing Month in October, and then we will also be planning a Natural Resources Month next month in June. Provide content for blogs on recruiting and retention practices located on our careerforcemn.com. We write blogs based on our conversations with employers and things that we feel like employers need to learn more about. For example, we did a series on workforce optimization. We did a series on unconscious biases. And then there are future blogs that we are working on as well. Hosting panel discussions, also, building having these panel discussions where we invite employers to be able to talk and ask questions. What we're calling Workforce Wednesdays, we'll be starting that up next month, inviting employers to be a part of this discussion. Research and provide data to support new ways of thinking for employers. So relying heavily on LMI and other data that we can find to support our recommendations and our suggestions for building their talent for their workforce. And then conducting presentations to stakeholders on subject matters. So we've presented to employers, associations, we have presented to groups within Minnesota, outside of Minnesota, as we traveled to other states and conferences to talk about best practices that are currently going on here in the state of Minnesota. So finding your strategy, workforce strategy consultant. So as I mentioned, there are 5 of us. We are in the process of hiring a 6th workforce strategy consultant for our Southeast area. Of course, you see my picture in the metro, but definitely you can find this information on careerforcemn.com. If you want to reach out to the consultant in your area, just to introduce yourselves. If you're an employer and you want to get some information and talk about how you can reach out to more talent in your area, definitely reach out to the workforce strategy consultant in your area. And with that, I am done. Thank you very much. This is my contact information. Email is the best way to get in touch with me if you have any follow-up questions, or if you are an employer on this call and you're interested in learning more about how the workforce strategy consultants or myself can assist you with coming up with strategies to attract and have more talent coming to your doors, feel free to email me. So thank you. Or if there are any questions, I'll answer them.
Thank you so much, Adesheva. Any questions, please either use the raise hand option or put it in the chat box. Earlier, I'm not sure if this is related with the presentation or the discussion Yusra had. I see Alexis had asked a question and said, what others' experiences are arranging job shadows. We have had some challenges and limitations in the past year because of COVID. Alexis, would you like to say more about that, perhaps, and to also understand whether the problem is just with the immigrants or, overall PIPOC community members?
That's a good question. So we pretty much only serve immigrants and refugees, so I can't speak to other populations. And I think I know that it's just been a little bit more challenged. Well, it sounds like more sites are opening up perhaps this summer. I don't know if that's anticipated in other sectors. So we're seeing some success with like construction and manufacturing trades. I think healthcare, understandably, is still a bit closed off. So I'm just curious if others are running into the same issues.
So you're asking me if I see other industries? I'm sorry, I didn't know if you were directing the question at me. This is Adesheva.
Yeah, that was an earlier question, I guess, for the group.
Adesheva, you can go ahead and answer if you have.
I'm sorry, I didn't know if you were addressing me. So like as I mentioned, we work with all employers that have a needs, not just the ones that are part of the in-demand industries that I mentioned earlier. And there seems to be, the same issues or same concerns across the board, which is, a high retirement, with the baby boomer generation, or what we like to call the silver tsunami, where you're going to have a lot of baby boomers retiring from that, and then not having enough workers to fill in those open positions. And then on top of that, you have employers creating new positions. So across the board, employers, there are some employers that opened up from the gate and said, yep, you know what, we want to have, we want recommendations, we want assistance, we are unable to do this ourselves, or we don't have the bandwidth, the manpower to do this. Unfortunately, there are still some employers that, once again, as I mentioned, have that employer-driven mindset, but they're in a candidate-driven market. And that's not just that doesn't only pertain to one industry. I have noticed that across all industries. The good thing is it is the minority, not the majority. I mean, it's slowly changing. I think employers are realizing this, and we give them the truth is, if you don't change your mindset, if you stay stagnant, what's the likelihood that your doors are going to be open in 2 years, 3 years? Not likely. And I think that kind of truth that we give them is a hard pill to swallow. And they're like, yeah, I need to look at, populations that I otherwise didn't consider. I mean, if we go into, the manufacturing, you had mentioned manufacturing, you're seeing a change in that. For years, manufacturing has been known as a white male dominated industry, such as also, information technology. Well, with a lot of the workers retiring and the face of Minnesota changing, employers in those two industries have no choice. I mean, if they want to keep their doors open, they have no choice. And so one of the things I believe Anissa had mentioned is one of the initiatives that I'm focusing on is how to get more representation from the BIPOC communities into manufacturing, and not in the entry level, but also in advanced manufacturing, where you have more of that IT component and the leadership in manufacturing and the C-suite level in manufacturing. And so, it's important too that I tell employers, or that we tell employers, it's not just about getting them into the entry level jobs and, okay, check mark, I've done that. These individuals want to make sure that they, if they want a career in this industry, they want to see that they might start in entry level, but after 15, 20, 25 years, they're in a leadership role where they're able to make decisions as well. So I hope that answered your question.
Thank you so much.
Those are a lot of really great points. No, I think those are a lot of really great points, and I appreciate the focus or the strategy of like a candidate-based hiring market versus employer-based, because I think we see some similar challenges. Thank you.
Yeah, there are other also initiatives that related with some challenges and things that can be done around manufacturing too. That Patricia Fenrick with the DHS Resettlement Office, who's here with us, had shared in the past. But because I'm mindful of the time, I'd like to reserve that for another forum where we can explore more ways to empower our immigrants and refugees and BIPOC communities to be able to access the resources and support system that will allow them to be part of the manufacturing and construction, and as well as technology industries. Adeshewa, I see a few questions here, and a couple of people have their hands up. I see the Linda Sloan said if she could have a copy of the presentation.
Yeah, I will send the information. I'll send it to you, Anissa, and then you can send it out to the group.
Sounds great. Thank you. And then Edmundo Lijo said, can the strategies you presented be used by local governments to find people to fill boards and committees? So we work as one of the things that we do as Workforce Strategy Consultants, that we do work closely with our local workforce development boards, with city entities. So we do help in that work or in those efforts. As I mentioned in the presentation, some of the Workforce Strategy Consultants work with the regional, with the regions to update regional plans, which by in-demand industries, and you have strategies for, what they want to do within the next year or 2 years, where that be increasing outreach out to
the K through 12 education, or, you know, increasing outreach to BIPOC organizations in that area. So there is work. I mean, the little strategies that I had mentioned, some of us are doing that with our regional stakeholders already.
Great. And finally, Linda had asked, and we were coming to the couple people, the folks that have their hands up too. Linda says that since this is a candidate-driven market, are you seeing more opportunities for individuals that require sponsorship?
That's, I'll say yes and no. No, I'm not seeing a lot of it, but that is some of that conversation is starting to happen. It's like at the very infantile stage. So, you know, yeah, so I guess that would be my answer, you know, no, but like it's just got out the starting gate. So, you know, it'll be a conversation that, you know, more people have, you know, as we move forward. But right now it's not a huge conversation. But once again, you know, we're letting employers know you have to think outside the box with everything when it comes to finding, you know, the talent. And as someone had mentioned, I believe the previous presenter had mentioned, is, you know, a lot of individuals are looking into entrepreneurship and opening, you know, their own businesses because they don't have opportunities when they apply for these jobs, which is great. You know, I'm a big supporter of entrepreneurship, but, you know, we know that not everyone can be an entrepreneur, unfortunately. And so it's really important that those individuals that can't or don't want to be, that they have those same opportunities, especially if they have proven that they have the skill sets to do that job. And I'll say this one last thing. There's a YouTuber that I follow. He's an entrepreneur, but he also does a lot of presentations, and I cannot remember his name for the life of me. If I find it, I'll send it to you, Anissa, to share with the group. But he said, you know, the one thing that employers need to do to keep their doors open when they're looking for talent, when they're recruiting, they have to remember that, you know, hiring is guessing, knowing is firing is knowing, which means, you know, taking a chance on the individual. If that person doesn't have 80% of the qualifications that you're looking for, but they might have 70, what can you do to get them up to that 80%? Don't just disregard them because they might be a wonderful employee. I think we all know someone that might have not started out having the skill sets that employer needed, but then you look at them now and they're a rock star in their company. When you let someone go or you fire them, that's knowing. You know that they are unfortunately not a good match for that particular job. And so in the past, employers have hired with the mindset that they know that this person is going to be, you know, a good fit. And just with this current climate, it's a guess, taking a chance. And by doing that, you're opening up, you know, the talent pool that you're looking at to include BIPOC community residents, individuals that might have a disability, veterans, women, you know, for jobs that, you know, you wouldn't a couple of years ago find a woman or find someone from the BIPOC community working in that field. So it's once again, it's really telling employers, changing your mindset. You change your mindset, you're going to change your results and you're going to get that talent.
Thank you so much, Edishewa. And I was going to say to Linda's question, actually, I have seen employers that were not interested in connecting with immigrants and refugees because they presumed that they would require sponsorship. And that's why we had Patricia Fenrick, who did a lot of trainings about immigration forms and documents and what to use to present, because I didn't even realize there were employers that thought that most of the immigrants and refugees in our communities require sponsorship. So there's a room for, engaging with them and educating them about that the communities do have their, immigration documents, but and among other issues. But anyway, with the time, I see that few people are still having questions at Eshewa. I thought Michael Yang had his hands up, but maybe he kind of put it down. Michael, if you're still there,
Yeah, I'm here.
definitely. Oh, go ahead. Yeah, please ask
Thank you.
your question.
Michael Yang, NCR Neighborhood and Community Relations with City of Minneapolis. I'm the Southeast Asian Community Specialist. I'm in the middle of talking with a few elders and leaders in the Southeast Asian community. And I think one of the consideration that DEED and other employers should consider is initiate cultural specific strategy to engage talents in the immigrants and refugee community. It's just not professional way, but in a way that is it's culturally specific and it's culturally respectful. I think that there's a lot of opportunities of talents in especially the Southeast Asian community and other refugee community that English is not their first language. For us to be inclusive of those cultural community that don't have the language skills outside of their professional area. So thank you so much for the opportunity.
No problem. Can I just say something really quick? You are absolutely correct when you say this. We have said it, and I know for sure I hit it home, as much as I can. There's not a cookie cutter way to outreach and to reach out to different communities, even within the BIPOC communities. The way that you do outreach to the Hmong population is going to be a little bit different than how you reach out to the Somali population. And Anissa, you and I have had these conversations before. So it's also, for me, telling employers not only is recruiting to, white residents different than recruiting to BIPOC residents, even within the BIPOC community, recruiting is different. And once again, this is a candidate-driven market, so it is on the employer to develop those strategies, to develop those different ways, and not to use a cookie cutter. But I agree with you 100% on this. Really, reaching out to the elders, reaching out to those in the community that the other communities look up to. If you get their support in whatever initiative, or if you're an employer trying to recruit from that group, then it's going to be easier for you to recruit from that group if you get the support from those that community respects. So I agree with you 100%.
Thank you. And then I see Sam Mwangi has his hands up. Sam, go ahead, please.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much, Anissa. Mine is just a comment. I wasn't sure about, this is to Adesewa, the Minnesota age demographic graph, which shows, I think, the trend of the changes from 2018 to 2038. Now, does this include the immigrant and the refugees also, or you're just talking about the people who were born in this country? I just want some clarification. I think I got lost there.
I think it's for all Minnesotans. So it doesn't exclude immigrant and refugee. I know that one of the other questions too that someone had is for the African American projected population. Does that include immigrant refugees from African countries? And I believe so. I think Anissa, for clarification, we can always reach out to our LMI analysts and ask them to clarify that. But I believe that includes it also.
Yeah, I think that's important too. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Definitely. There's also data that had been published by Wilder Foundation and was commissioned by Prosperity Ready, a nonprofit organization, and that shows that there's over 86% of particularly the immigrant communities with IT professionals are African immigrants. So I can share that data too if anyone is interested in, because it's really important. But overall, immigrants and refugees, because we're not utilizing the talents within these communities, per our state and economic viewpoint, we're losing $5.1 billion each year. And that's a huge in regards to the employment gap. And it shows that there's a lot that we need to do on both ends. I know we're kind of running out of time. Adeshewa, thank you so much for doing this. I just want to give you a few more minutes so the people that already raised their hands and had been waiting for a while can get some questions answered. I see Kamati. Kamati, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
All right, go ahead.
How you doing?
Good to see you.
Good. Hi.
Yeah, I was just following everything. I think I'm enjoying the presentation. But my question is, we have identified some of the challenges in this work market, the workforce, and what have you, and the disparity that is inherent from people from our community.
Mhm.
So if we would take one thing away from this discussion and this conversation, what would you say that would be the positive things for us to be able to jump over the hurdles that exist and the challenges that we face as a community of people of color?
So I would say the positive of this is recognizing, or not recognizing, but realizing that, employers have been told, and they're being told every chance we get to tell them that, I like what I'd like to call the 2008, 2009 kind of recruiting, where they were selective, where they overlooked BIPOC community residents, where there was that preconceived notion of a lack of talent in for that's not. I mean, if your doors want to remain open, you can't do that anymore. You're gonna have to look at the populations. You're gonna look at, just because that person is from a BIPOC community, or English is not their first language, that doesn't mean that they don't come with the skill sets to be able to do that job. And so I think it's now the positive. I would say it's more on the employer. The employer has to change the mindset. Now, I would say as job seekers, to make sure that just because it's a candidate market right now, that you should always continue to invest in upskilling and finding, to continue training and preparing yourself, because that pendulum swings back and forth. And eventually it's going to swing back to an employer-driven market, where then the employer has the upper hand. That just, it is what it is, and that's what happens. But I think right now it is on the employer. It's like, you don't want to change. If you don't want to change your strategies for recruiting and opening up your talent pool to include possible recruitment from BIPOC populations, well, we'll give you a 2-year countdown starting now, and in 2 years we'll come back and talk to you and see how everything is going. It's like, the sugar coating, the fluff talk is, for me, that's over. It's being upfront and honest with employers. The face of Minnesota is changing. You need to adapt. You need to look outside of what you usually look at when it comes to talent pool, and consider these other populations. Consider, investing in the youth. Today's youth is part of tomorrow's workforce, and that's diverse as well. So.
Thank you so much, Adeshewa. I just want to have one more minute to cover, at least with Florence's question, and then we will move on to our next speaker. Girma and Mamade, if you could type your questions or comments in the chat box, I'd really appreciate it. So that way we have enough time for community updates. Adeshewa has a ton of information, very expert in this field. If you really feel you need to have more information, definitely feel free to reach out to her. But I want to give this last question to Florence Wanda. Go ahead, Florence.
Hi, Anissa. Thank you so much. What an informative presentation. Thank you. But my question, I did ask a question about the demographics of the African immigrant. I think you did answer that. But it would be nice to kind of separate that that data, so we kind of see what is happening to the African immigrant as they're rising. Are we really servicing them? And the other question I had was, what are the incentives or incentive that DEED has for these employers to hire or recruit from the BIPOC community? Because if you just keep talking to them and keep dialoguing, it would just go, it would dwindle down. But if there's an incentive that will incentivize them to really hire from this population, and we're not forcing them to, but you're presenting, like Anissa said, there's a talent pool in this community, in this African immigrant community. People don't see it unless you actually showcase it to them and present it to them. So I don't know, it's too many questions in one, but
Adeshewa, you want to take on that, or you want me to ask? Go.
Yeah, I can say, well, I know, for example, for Tech Month, there was a grant that DEED had issued, and it was focused on BIPOC, training BIPOC residents, I think between the ages of 18 and 24. And so, that's an example of just an incentive, if that's what we want to call it, that DEED is through the grants. Now it's not happening a lot. I mean, but I mean, I do think that it's something that is needed. But with DEED just being the entity that it is, and being a state organization, and it's focusing on the economic development of all its residents, there has to be a lot of talks and consideration. If DEED sends out lots of grants and opportunities just focusing on particular groups, the likelihood that you would get someone, other groups upset, is high. So I think that's something that DEED considers too. But I mean, we understand too is there, honestly, there shouldn't be an incentive. The only incentive, I guess, would be, by looking at other groups, looking at BIPOC communities, you're going to find more talent, and you're going to be able to keep your doors open. To me, that should be incentive enough. You still want to be in existence. You still want to have an income coming in. There shouldn't be a need to send out or put together, some type of grant or something like that. I mean, you want to keep your doors open. That should be motivation. But I really not going to say a lot about it because I'm not at that level to develop and put together grants. But yeah, so.
Thank you so much. And Florence, there are a lot of initiatives that are really supporting and creating ways to help employers engage with BIPOC communities, not just African immigrants or immigrants and refugees, but BIPOC communities, and immigrants and refugees are part of this. And the thing is, any employers that are interested in really diversifying their work, an agency will definitely reach out. There are a lot of employers that are interested in connecting, but I also noticed working with the career force teams and working with the strategy workforce consultants such as Adeshewa, that also there's a bit disconnect between the employers and job seekers. Oftentimes the resumes do not match what their the positions are, and many employers do not really understand the background of the people applying to the jobs, thinking, okay, you have too many degrees, why are you even applying to these jobs? It's not going to help you create a sustainable wage income. Why is that? Not really understanding the cultural and differences of the need to provide for income, the need to make ends meet. And for that matter, many BIPOC community members or immigrants and refugees particularly will not be thinking about, well, I'm educated, therefore I'm going to apply for the job that I qualify for. They are thinking about, how do I pay the rent? How do I make ends meet? Therefore, I'll take on any job. But we're working on creating ways to engage with employers and support them so that way they understand these different dynamics. With that, I'd like to move forward with our next speaker, Francisco Segovia. He is the Executive Director for Communities Organizing Latinx Power and Action, short for COPAL. COPAL's vision is to build a world that's just, equitable, enjoyable, and environmentally sustainable for all. Francisco is an advocate, fierce advocate for communities' growth within the PIPA communities and immigrants and refugees. He will speak on how community leaders like himself can serve as a bridge connecting employers to job seekers, because many times employers are saying we can't find the people, but we thought, why not connect with the community leaders? They have the power to connect community members to any resources that are available within our state, whether it's public or private. And we just would like to learn how a community leader like Francisco and other community leaders, employers can rely on them, so then employers can identify and connect with the job seekers and be able to fill in these positions that are open for so long. Welcome, Francisco.
Thank you, and thank you for the invitation, and hello to everyone. It is an honor to be with you all. Yes, I'm Francisco Segovia. I migrated to the United States in 1990 when Lake Street was not what it is now in terms of populations, and also Cedar Riverside is not what it is now. I used to work at the Brian Coyle Center, where I met a lot of, at that moment, a lot of young Somalis as well. As an immigrant myself, I need to put things in context. So when you see me and when you judge who I am, I want to tell you that I left in my home country due to a civil war. And so when you leave the country due to those conditions, you just basically, you just show up to a new place with what you had, what you were, because that's how it is. So had to cross many borders to end up in the United States. My hope was to get to Canada, couldn't. And I'm saying why Canada, because back then I could hear that Canada had a lot of more incentives for immigrants to migrate with opportunities as well. But I end up in Florida and then in Minnesota without documents, no English skills. But I had almost 5 years of university education. I'm a teacher. And so here I was, not knowing what to do, no English skills, but many skills in many other areas. And so the process of navigation, it is not easy. As immigrants, we take the jobs that are going to allow us to pay our bills, as it was said. But one of the things that I think I want to share with you is that number one is about the immigration situation. We immigrants, you are not undocumented forever. It's a moving target as you are able to figure things out, or as we keep pushing for an immigration reform, because there are so many people, talented people who, due to lack of documentations, are unable to have a regular job. So that's an important piece. The second piece is we left our country and we drain our own societies by moving to another place that didn't invest in our own education. So my home country, which is a pretty humble country economically speaking, the society was the one who paid for my 5 years of education. But I came to the United States, and one of the things that I realized is that the Eurocentric mentality in the United States doesn't allow us to appreciate and to recognize what other peoples bring to the table. And I learned that when I went to look for English skills, and the counselor who was interviewing me was so much interested in putting me into GED. And I expressed many times, I don't need GED, I just need English skills. But I wasn't able to get that person, or I wasn't able to persuade that person. So I didn't follow what she was telling me. And I keep going or looking for English skills. So it is, biases or whatever name you want to that situation. There is this lack of recognition that education and experiences from immigrants are very much valuable, to the point that many of the things that I do now, or I keep doing, has many of the things that I had learned in my home country, my own experience, has helped me a lot to build an organization from the organization that I work right now, and previous job that I had before. Those are key elements, I believe, that that is important. I think it is key that speaking English with accent is not a way to measure someone's skills. It shouldn't, right? So there are other ways to measure that. For about 10 years, I did employment services through Pillsbury United Communities. And it was then when I met many people from the Somali community in the 1996 through the 2011. I met so many professionals from Somalia who had a huge bunch of degrees, but like myself, prior to that, I was doing survival jobs. And as a job counselor at that time, I had to advocate a lot to many companies to give that person an opportunity and to see the skills that those individuals brought to the table. But you know, our Minnesota nice, in our Minnesota way of thinking about immigrants, it has been a long way still to go, but has been a process to educate our Minnesota and Hawaii community that, hey, we are an asset, we are not a deficit. If you see us as an asset, we can contribute greatly to this society. So, but then through my own experience, this is one of the things that is pretty interesting that I think, and I know a question was there about being on boards, joining boards, city boards, and stuff like that. If I have wealth and I have some free time, you can invite me to a free board because I can give you what I know. However, we as an immigrants, we are still building that wealth. So if you invite me to so many places to offer my time, I won't be able to do it because it goes back to drain the resources of a community that is still trying to figure things out. So let's be mindful that when someone asks us to participate and give our time because we are the experts, but as experts, we don't get compensated the same way that that people at those jobs are compensated. Is just basically a way to drain our resources. So there are so many boards, city, county, state, that they could invest some monies to attract the talent that they need from our immigrant community. Again, if someone is wealthy or is well established, may have the option not to collect that. But if you are an immigrant, you are still trying to figure things out. So I will challenge the importance of allocating resources. The same thing to corporations or companies. Allocate resources to do that. And once you allocate resources and incentives, you will identify the people that you want to hire for staying with your job. We had an experience like that as a small organization, and last year we accomplished something that no other Latino organization yet has accomplished, which is basically connecting over 18,000 Latino voters statewide to participate in the elections. We brought a number of 10 mostly college Latino students. We provided, we paid them, but what we learned was like, from that pool of people, I was able to hire some to stay with the organization because they brought a lot of talent, knowledge, commitment, and some of them are working with us now, and they are still in college, but working for us because they have the skills to do the job. And those who couldn't stay, it is my job, I believe, as a leader, to support them to navigate how to succeed in the world of work. So now, when it's about opportunities, I believe that when we put together this organization, COPAL, was with the idea that I asked myself, what is the future of me within Minnesota? Do we know what do we want? Because we have dreams like anyone else. And I realized that as community, we haven't yet, or we oftentimes do not participate in the decision making that happens at various levels. We are the target of a lot of good discussions, but we are not at the table where those discussions happen. So somebody else always represents our needs and our vision. And so I think it's about time to ensure that that we include people, but not from the tokenism time, like I want to ask this Latino what they think, and because this Latino told me, I know what Latino think. As Latinos, we are a very complex community coming from many countries, mostly Mexicans, but then the second, another large population, if you include Puerto Ricans, and then people from Central America. So we are very different in many ways, and it is key for us, or for the people who interact with us, to recognize that when we speak about Latinos, we are not all the same, and that we have. If there is one thing in common, is that we have dreams like everybody else. Another element of us, I think, it is that we sustain two economies. We sustain the economy of the United States where we live, and we sustain the economy of our countries. Just Mexico and Central America, I think we sent back home about $60 billion in a year. So that's huge. And so, again, our participation in this economy benefits two economies. Now, and what relates to companies, and if there is anything to advise, is to realize that many of the people that you see, if you are able to engage with us and learn more about what we do, you will realize that we have so much knowledge. Many of us come with degrees. And the first thing that we do is to find a cleaning job, because that's what most times they see us as good for it. But from there, and this is one of the reasons we have, we just opened a worker center, is because we want to facilitate and support our community to validate some of their credentials. I myself had to do that. When I came here, my university credentials were not validated, so I had to go through a process and take some other classes to have a bachelor's degree and then open up my opportunities. And so my story is not unique. There are so many people with doctor's degrees, engineering degrees, a bunch of different degrees. What we need sometimes is the opportunity that allows us to go to those classes and validate our credentials. As an organization right now, we are looking and participating into the discussion about the green economy. The green economy is going to present many opportunities, but like any other opportunity, if we don't participate into the discussion and how those opportunities are going to open up, our communities are going to be left out. So it is key for us to be civically engaged, and that's why our organization exists, to civically engage our community, shape systems, and participate in the various activities that will allow our communities to live better. Like anyone else, again, we just want to live better. We want to live a life with dignity, respect, but it's key to solve some of the issues that I mentioned before, and one of them is the immigration reform. And within the immigration reform, we have two populations within our communities. One is the DACA population, which is a lot of young people who may experience the very same thing as the people on TPS, the temporary protected status. Those people on TPS have been on that status for over 30 years, some. It's a labor force that began young and now is about retiring age, but hasn't been able yet to solve their immigration status. We may end up with DACA, that very same thing, if we don't act. And in addition to the people that we have without documents. So it is essential to solve that. Now, it is the time for people seeking employment to have opportunities. And as it was mentioned before, the census of 2020 is showing us that the population of the United States is not growing in the way, I mean, the population has slowed down, and are the immigrants populations the one who are contributing or who are growing. But here is one important aspect. The better jobs we immigrants have, the more taxes we are going to pay. And the more taxes we pay are going to be paying the retirement of those baby boomers. So keep that in mind, that the baby boomers' retirement depends on the capacity of us immigrants to be able to hold great jobs that pays us well so we can contribute greater. So in a way, our future, our society is so connected that the more opportunities immigrants have, the better jobs, the more taxes. And then the better our collective communities will be. So with that in mind, when you invest in one of us and one community member, it is not that you are giving anything to no one. You are invested in your own future. I will say that will be my message to a company. You want business? Well, invest in the community, because eventually your business is going to grow, because we also are consumers. We contribute and we consume as well. Therefore, there is this connection between the corporation and the populations that we have. And again, I think it's important to mention, census is a reality that is forcing many of us, many corporations to realize that without us, there is no future. So with that, I will stop here.
Thank you so much, Francisco. I really appreciate your input and also sharing the story, your background, how you came here, and the challenge that you had faced. I know that it's only 8 minutes left of our forum time today. If you have quick questions, please put it in the chat box. But we were gonna have a few minutes for community updates. I'm afraid we may not have that. But I wanted to let you know that on June, our forum will definitely focus on the Minnesota Department of Agriculture, especially what we can do to empower communities that are interested in manufacturing and retail, but also wanting to know about regulation and compliance within this industry, and then also the agriculture, and what immigrants and refugees and Pai communities can do to partake the resources available to them, and what challenges that they're facing. I think there's an opportunity for that as well, because we know when Pai communities are empowered, they also share that success with others, and hence create economic and employment growth. So I know there are other updates, but what I'm going to do is I will include it in the blog, and then I'll share with you all the information, and those of you that had asked for the data, particularly, I'll send that out as well. But thank you so much, Yusra, Adeshewa, and Francisco, for sharing your stories and the backgrounds, and the different ways to engaging with employers and connecting job seekers. It's really important at the end of the day, regardless of immigration status or when someone came here or not. What matters is that we're all here. How do we unify our efforts? How do we get together and create this strategy plan in place for creating Minnesota to become one of the states that it's on the map and that recovers economically. And with that, it's inevitable to reach out to our BIPOC communities, immigrant and refugees, and also utilize these talents. So with that, I see that there are a lot of thank yous to Francisco. Thank you so much. And I'd like to give you 5 minutes back of your time. Thank you so much. And I hope to see you in June, because I want to talk about it and see how the agriculture department can join us in June and focus on how do we really help our farmers. What do we know about eating healthy food? What do we know about, having resources that are available to farmers within the BIPOC communities? And what areas can we help with them, those that are already in the farming business? Thank you so much, and have a blessing week, all of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
What a great